Before starting this week's episode, we would like to issue a trigger warning to our listeners. This episode has themes of religion, addiction, disorders, and self-harm. If any of these themes are triggering for you, we thank you for supporting us and we'll catch you next week.
I'm talking about, you're talking about, we're talking about just gay stuff.
So welcome to another episode of Just Gay Stuff podcast. My name is Jess.
And I'm Lauren.
And this week's episode is super exciting, and I feel like I say that every week. Do I say that?
You do, but
I say that every week.
They are.
It is. Well, today is extra special because we have another special guest joining us for an interview.
We do. I love having all these special guests.
It's so good. We get to share stories. We get to hear everyone else's different experiences, and we are talking to a very special person today who has a lot of experiences under her belt. So we have the pleasure of introducing to you Tasha Turner. And Tasha identifies as genderqueer and pansexual, going by she, they pronouns. She's a counsellor located in a rural town, and today we are going to speak to her about her journey to self-discovery, which from our email correspondence has a few twists and turns. So Tasha, introduce yourself. We're so humbled to have you join us today.
Hello, Tasha.
Hello, thank you for having me. And you're right, it's been a story like for many of us goes all over the place. It's not just a straight line. So it's lovely to have the opportunity to share some of that and maybe help other people.
We can't wait to hear all about it. As I said in the intro, we've been emailing back and forth, and there's a lot of topics that we can cover today that I can't wait for you to tell us more about.
And I think are so important for everyone listening.
Well, we've said this before, everyone's coming out story, which is where we're going to start. Everyone's coming out story is so unique to them. And then we don't realize the little nuances between everyone's stories that connect us, that one person who may feel very isolated might come in and listen to your story and go, oh my God, I feel like that as well. And I thought I was the only one.
Yeah.
So that's why Lauren and I feel it is so important to interview people and have everyone share their unique story on our podcast. So thank you again. And let's start
Let's
there.
start with the coming out story. Hey, Tasha.
Okay, so it was for many of us long. It went over many years.
Yeah.
So where it started, probably I was about 16 now and quite heavily into alcohol by that point, and I've got lots of addictions in my past.
Yeah.
So I was out nightclubbing and I would black out quite frequently. And my friend said to me, "So you just kissed her?" And I went, "What?"
You didn't remember?
I know. I'm like, she went, "Her over there." And I went, "What? Hang on, her?" And I'm thinking, "Don't you mean him?" And she's like, "No, her." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, I better go and do it again because I don't remember." So that was my kind of, okay, then, so I guess I like girls and boys. And I was the only person I knew. I'm from Wales. So it's a small beachside town. Luckily, my mates were like, "That's just Tash. That's obviously what she's doing, whatever that is, I don't know." And it was very much, so I'm 50, almost 50, which is awful. So in the 1970s, it was very much, okay, you can do it. It had to be quite secret, even though I was in a nightclub. But I couldn't have a relationship with a girl. I could have a relationship with a guy, but a girl, it had to be hidden.
Yeah.
And I just didn't get that. But I just carried on doing my thing. It's just the way I am. I didn't know there was a name. I just thought that's just what I do. And I felt attracted to anyone, which was a bit confusing. And it's when I went to uni, which was quite a long way from my tiny town. So I went to a big city in the UK, one of the biggest LGBT scenes in the UK. And I arrived there and went, "Oh, it's a thing?" I was like, "Oh, right. Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, but hang on. I like anyone." I was like, "Any gender. What's that?"
Yeah.
So that's where I understood. Back then we didn't use pansexuals. We just used bisexual. So that's where I understood more about my sexuality and just had a blast, really enjoying myself and being very free when I was in my years at uni.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then during my life between then and now, with my sexuality, it's just depended who I'm with. I've never hidden it. But when I've been with a partner, say it's with a female who's a lesbian, I might be like, okay, well, I'm attracted to you at the moment. I'm not doing anything with anybody else. But I've also got polyamory in my background. So there's times when I've been like, no, I want to have multiple relationships at once. And I want to do that. And then there's been times where I was in a heterosexual marriage, but I was very clear at the beginning. I'm like, I'm not heterosexual. I'm very happy to be married to you and be monogamous, but my sexuality is determined by the person I'm with.
Yeah.
And then when I actually met my wife, so my wife is binary trans. So we met about a decade ago, not long after all her surgeries. And actually, since my time being with her, that's when I've really understood my gender. So that was another layer of, not because of being with her, but I had the freedom
Yeah.
and me understanding, oh, there's more. Oh, there's
Yeah.
more. It's not just my sexuality. Oh, this is interesting. And that's really, and like I said, that's a whole other journey, but still, now me understanding my gender and my sexuality, I'm like, oh, now I get it. I'm only nearly 50 and I've just got it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it is
wow.
all about the people that we meet, opening us up to these new experiences and new adventures within ourselves and new discovery, because, you know, we've talked about this a lot with some of our other guests about representation that is in the media and representation through celebrities and through television. And when you don't have those other things outside of what is considered social norm, you don't allow yourself to question anything, because you go, oh, well, I feel this way, maybe, but it mustn't be correct because I don't see it anywhere else.
Because you don't see it. It's not portrayed. I think that's why that's so important to have guests like you on this podcast, for people to have that
Yeah, well, that's
representation.
it. We're essentially creating representation for people when they don't see it in general media.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course, even being nearly 50 now, and it's like, well, you've now been allowed to open up because you've met people that have allowed yourself to open up, and you've got a new journey with this person. And keep going. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I find that so interesting.
Fascinating.
Yeah, thank you. And it really was when I met my wife and I had this space to be whoever I need to be. And she didn't influence my gender in that way. But because of her being binary trans, I was more in the trans community then. Even 10 years ago, there wasn't much non-binary representation.
Yeah.
So I was in the trans community going, well, I don't think I'm cisgender anymore. Maybe I never was, but I'm not binary trans. So, what's that then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I met some non-binary people. I'm like, no, that's not quite me either.
Yeah.
And I've been able to, understand over the 10 years, oh, my gender moves around, but I'm not gender fluid. Oh, I'm gender queer. Oh, that's right.
So what does genderqueer mean for you?
So that for me really fits, because my gender can fluctuate on the day. Often it's a mix of different genders. Some it's more one gender than another. And I don't have much physical dysphoria, so I present femme, which really confuses the hell out of a lot of people, because they're like, but you look like that. And I'm like, yeah, and so my dysphoria is mainly mental and social, which is invisible and really confronting. It's very hard because I'm often in the position of having to prove I'm genderqueer.
Yeah.
But I've had top surgery. So in 2017, I had majority of my chest off.
Yeah.
In theory, it was to help with the fact that I have chronic pain. However, I knew there was more.
Yeah.
People will talk about their surgery euphoria. I woke up, I looked down, and I could see my feet, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so ecstatic. They've gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've got some of my chest left. But it was at that moment I was like, now my gender can be exactly as it needs to be. And I don't need to be on hormones, but I needed that massive area of dysphoria removed. And then my gender queens could move around. It was like it was this physical barrier to me having my gender to have its freedom. So that was a real defining moment.
And so before that happened, before you had that surgery, when you used to look down and see your chest, what did you feel? How did that make you feel?
If you ask any trans person with physical dysphoria, they'll probably say the same thing. Absolute disgust.
Yeah.
Like many of us, I wouldn't let any of my partners touch my chest.
And you didn't bind?
I didn't bind, so I didn't know that was a thing then. But, I just have to say 2 bras on. And even when I had my appointment for the reduction, I was so emotional because I didn't want the surgeon to look at my chest. So just so much shame.
Yeah.
So I have a 29-year anorexia and bulimia journey, which really nearly killed me. I had a heart attack. I'm fine now. I just have the physical results of that.
Yeah.
But I look back now and I know that started when I was a teenager. And it started as soon as my chest developed.
Yeah.
So a very quick way to get rid of your breast is to starve yourself
Yeah.
and become androgynous. And then all my dysphoria was in control, because then I was no particular gender. So I look back at that now and go, oh God, that's another layer.
Yeah. So you can see like the connection there between your anorexia and the fact that you really just didn't want to present as feminine as you would be to just be
Yeah.
what socially
Yeah.
is a woman.
Yeah, 100%. And I didn't understand that. It's still not understood well enough in the eating disorders community that that's changing. And it's another reason why I talk about it a lot. And also because eating disorders are rife in the trans community.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, that can make sense for a lot of people that maybe aren't even understanding it in themselves in the moment, but then after might come to the conclusion, oh, well, I do have these other things going on within myself that all connects.
Yeah.
And then so I guess you're bringing that to the forefront for people to think about and going, oh, hey, well, if you're feeling like this, maybe we can solve it with this. And maybe you don't have to attack your own body to feel whole.
Way, yeah.
Yeah.
Very important.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah.
So I really wanted to also touch on the fact that in your emails to us, you talked about experiencing a lot of homophobia, and we love to talk about how that has affected you and affected people in general and how you've combated that. So do you want to start with your story about your neighbours and being run out to a rural town?
Yeah. So I didn't really experience any homophobia. Even when I was poly, I had multiple partners of different genders. People didn't have an issue.
Yeah.
But when I met my wife who's trans, so my wife doesn't pass, which is the word we use, doesn't pass hugely well. She's very tall. She's very muscular.
Yeah.
And, I'm very lucky that she doesn't care that much that she doesn't pass that well. But people just immediately had an issue. Even the people I worked with had an issue. And I lived in my home for almost 20 years in Redcliffe, and I worked in Redcliffe. My family were in Redcliffe. So I had a very solid community there. And we were in a townhouse. I own my townhouse, and my neighbour started to rent it out. And two of the tenants that we had were, this is interesting talking as a therapist. I'm not talking as a therapist now. I'm talking as a person who's not being a therapist. So I had two people move in next door who, and as an ex-addict, it's also quite funny to talk about this. They would sit in the back garden, which of course was attached to us. And literally from 5 a.m. till 2 a.m. the next morning, the music would be on, they'd be drinking, they were taking drugs, they were selling drugs from outside of my home, they were stealing cars, hiding them in the garage. We put a security camera up, so we had all of this filmed drug deals. We had,
oh my gosh,
we had 60 drug deals.
60?
Yeah, overnight, because they would come and there was a secret knock and the deal would be, it was a shared driveway, so it was right outside my home.
Yeah.
My sleep, I barely slept for about 18 months, and I have PTSD, which is part of the reason there.
Yeah.
And these people were also picking on me in particular because I'm like 5'1". So I'm 5'1", and I would be in the shops and I would have food thrown at me from the aisles when I was doing my shopping.
Oh my
That is
goodness.
ridiculous.
Because they would follow me. Yeah, they pinned me against a wall with a car. They drove down a pavement and pinned me against a wall. They were on my roof overnight. They were in my garden. My wife's a sculptor, so they destroyed her sculptures in the garden. They hid drugs in the fence.
Jeez.
We had some very dangerous people hiding guns next door as well. So, obviously I involved the police many times.
Yeah.
I had all this proof, and I had a constable come to my house and tell me there's no law against dickheads.
What?
And my response to that, because when I'm not being a therapist, I'm fiercely protective, and I can get quite angry. And I said to him, well, that's a convenient excuse. So you're not going to help me? And he said, people can be transphobic. I'm like, they're on my property. They're on my property, and they're driving at me down the road, and they're pinning the car with a car, and they're threatening me. So we would get threatened as well. It was just awful. Every single day there was something happening. And I really wasn't coping. I was having some of my head surgeries at the same time, which is another story. So I was in recovery, not recovering. And it was just one day when it got really bad, and I'd had objects thrown at me, including cutlery and a knife down the driveway.
Jesus.
And my wife just said to me, "We need to go." And I
Yeah.
said, "Okay, before we go, I'm going to do one thing." So I contacted a current affair,
Mm-hmm.
and they came and they filmed. So they filmed for the whole day. They're the ones that found the drugs stored in my hedge. So they had took all this footage. I then contacted the owner and the police, and I said, "Okay, so this isn't a threat. This is going to air on Sunday. You have 3 days to do something about it. If it's not, it's going to air. I'm just telling you. I don't have to tell you."
Yeah.
And they managed to evict those people within 2 days, but they then moved in another lot who were just as bad. So that's when
terrible.
my wife said to me, she said, "We have to go." And because we both have PTSD from that, we had to go somewhere where we could afford a standalone house.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that was nowhere near Redcliffe. So we need space from people. So we kept looking. And of course, we were going up the coast and then inland as we were looking. And we ended up here, having been here once to this tiny rural town. But we were so desperate to get out. Like with my real estate agent, I said, it was before Christmas. I said, "I have to get out. I'm literally losing my mind." My own psychologist was extremely worried because I was not sleeping. I was hypervigilant. I was dissociating. I would not remember some things. I was really losing my shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we found a place and moved, not knowing anyone at all and having to leave everything I'd built up in 20 years. And obviously, as you can hear, this was 5 years ago. I still have a lot of pain around that because I never wanted to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I can
Yeah.
hear it in your voice just telling your story. It's very like you've got a lump in your throat.
I don't think that pain ever goes away, unfortunately, when you're suffering something from so traumatic.
And not when you're leaving behind
your whole life.
Yeah.
something that you worked so hard for and that you never wanted to leave. And especially when, that was your house. You owned that house. That was your rightful space. And people external to you affect you in a way that makes you have to leave. It always seems so wrong.
I think the worst part of that is that, asking for help, asking for that safety
From people who you think you can rely on.
you can rely on, and then they're not there for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. The police told me to pull my head in because they weren't helping. I would get extremely angry. It's funny looking back from my wife telling me, because I don't remember, flying down the stairs because they'd be, in the driveway. I'd go flying down the stairs, run down the driveway. Two of these people doing drug deals, swear profusely, threaten them, tell them to leave my property, be really, really loud, as if I was going to attack them.
Yeah.
And the police said to me, "You've just got to stop." And I was like, "You're not doing anything. Can you imagine living in my home with this going on all the time and not sleeping and being attacked and not knowing if I go to the shops, if I'm going to have things thrown at my head?"
Yeah.
And no one does anything. And that's the other thing. No one does anything in the shops. People just look the other way.
Yeah, they always think someone else will help you, but then that carries on. It's a chain of events. Oh, I won't help because someone else will. I won't help because someone else will.
Yeah.
What I don't understand is, okay, the police say it's not illegal to be a dickhead, but they essentially were harassing and assaulting you, and that is illegal.
Yes.
So,
Yes, exactly. And things are different now that they have the LGBTI police liaison officers who were there at the time as well, but they're a lot more active in their role now. And, obviously I have some trauma around my interactions with police.
Yeah.
And I am also aware that I wouldn't want to do their job and not everyone is the same.
Yeah.
I have to try and remind myself of that. That's why people go to things like current fair, because we don't have any other options.
Yeah.
It's true though.
and at the end of the day, they were the ones that helped at least get the first lot of people moved on.
Yeah.
So regardless of the fact that you were met with the same circumstances a second time round, they were the ones that helped you move the first. And it
Yes.
wasn't the police that helped you. So unfortunately, as
Which
you
is
say,
saying something.
that's why people do contact those kinds of places.
Yeah.
And so you moved to a rural town out in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
And how has that gone so far? So obviously there's still a lot of pain with you leaving the life in Redcliffe behind,
Yeah.
but how is it going?
Yeah, I'm laughing because I feel sorry for the town.
You feel sorry for the town?
So we are the only queer people here.
Yeah.
Wow.
There is a lesbian couple, but I'm like really out. I'm really in people's face. Right? That's just the way I am. And the more people try to push me down, the bigger and louder I get.
Yeah.
So they never met a trans person like my wife. And of course, we moved to a town that's very religious.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh,
You know, when you move because your life is in danger,
yeah.
then you just move to somewhere that's better.
Mhm.
So yes, we're still here, but unfortunately, the bit that's not in my email. So when we moved in, we were as careful as we could be about where we moved, but of course you don't know your neighbours. And
Yeah.
our real estate agent assured us that they were good people, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, they were good people if you weren't transgender.
Yeah, right.
So we moved in and I was on my 5th head surgery. I've had 6. So my 5th head surgery, we moved in and it turned out that we had a devout apostolic person next to us who told me I was an abomination in Christ, which made me laugh actually, because I think Christ has got better things to do.
Yeah, agreed.
And he harassed us every day. He would film us with a drone, which we reported, but nothing would happen. The people over the road, again, would come into our property at night time and attack things, and they would have really, really massive parties. And all of a sudden, you'd have 20 people in your front garden having a big fight because that's the place to have it. You know, target the trans people and by trying to get me evicted by petitioning the council. Like, so that was a whole other. I've got to stop there because I'm about to swear profusely and I don't know.
We're a
very inclusive podcast.
we're a very raw podcast, so swear as much as you like.
Swear is fine.
Good. Okay, great. I warn my clients that I swear a lot. So yeah, that was a shit show.
Yeah.
And the local police again told me to pull my head in and told me that I wasn't making any friends in town. And my response was, I'm here to be the therapist, not to make friends. And if you're threatening me, then that's illegal.
Mhm.
And your job is to come and help me. When I call you that there are people in my garden fighting and breaking my property, you need to be here. So I was then told I had to film it as proof, which I did film it as proof. So, of course, we'd been there 18 months. And I think it was the drone incident that really made us both go, we have to go.
Mm.
And I was ready at that point to leave town. I was like, yeah, you know what? I didn't want to be here and this hasn't worked out and we're not welcome here. We weren't in as much danger as in Redcliffe. It wasn't as bad as Redcliffe because people here, apart from our neighbours, don't blatantly discriminate against you. They're country people. They're a bit more reserved. They don't like you. Not everyone, obviously, but the people who don't like you, they just don't like you and they avoid you, right? So they're not as in your face.
Yeah.
So it's better. But I was there going, okay, let's go back to the sea. I miss the sea. I just want to leave. I was in a trauma flight space. I was like, I'm ready to go. I'm done.
Yeah.
However, we had a few friends in town. There was a place where we are now. So we've been here 3 years in town who they said, oh, there's this place and it's gone up for auction. And my wife's a sculptor and an artist and a carver, etc. They said there's a massive shed at the back for all her tools. And I kind of knew that as soon as my wife saw the shed that we'd end up staying.
Yeah.
She was in.
So we did. It's a huge house. So the whole lower level of the house is my clinic.
Yeah.
I have 5 rooms.
Oh, wow.
Which is hilarious for one therapist.
Yeah. Room
and-
to expand. You never know.
Oh, yeah. Also, I was very much like, oh, well, they didn't drive me out then. I wanted to go, but I guess I'll just make my clinic bigger and more rainbow. And luckily, where we are now, we are safe. Where we are, we're on the other side of town. So the town is getting used to us. And I'm the only mental health therapist, you know. So I'll say to people, before I came, you didn't have a mental health therapist. So whether I'm queer or not,
Yeah.
don't you think you could be grateful that you have someone here
Yeah.
who's able to look after the town? But I have faced, you know, a lot of people would rather we're not here.
Yeah.
So that's hard, and that's the hardest part about being here is having no community. That's really hard.
Yeah. And I suppose waking up every day with that thought of, oh, they really don't like us. And it's just like, yeah, where do you go to find solace? And you only have solace at home with each other, and that kind of thing must be difficult at times.
Yeah, and I mean, the pandemic for us in a way was great because a lot of the LGBT events went online.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. I can join all these groups and I can like connect with people who are like me. And that was fantastic. And it wasn't just me, a lot of my regional clients who are queer felt the same way. And the pandemic ended and all the online stuff disappeared.
Yeah.
What about us? So I'm lucky I connect a lot with my queer clients. So that's wonderful. But also there's some towns nearby, about an hour away. Well, you're in Ipswich, aren't you? So there's Ipswich, there's Toowoomba, and they have rainbow groups and events. However, because of my chronic pain, I can't drive, and my chronic fatigue, it means I can't go to many events now. So I really get my community mainly still through my friends back in Redcliffe who I speak to every week or every fortnight. I just don't see them. That's all.
Yeah.
And so they don't travel to see you either? Is it like they have their own thing? Like, I know everyone has their own lives, and do you ever get a in-person connect with them?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, that's good.
Important.
So they come up, I don't know, every few months. Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
That's good. I think that's so important that you've still managed to find a safe space for yourself amongst all these hardships that you've gone through.
Yeah. One thing that Lauren and I have
Yeah.
spoken about a lot, and even with our friends that aren't in the queer community, have been saying, you know, I don't understand this, or I don't understand trans, or I don't understand non-binary. And my answer to them is always, oh, it's probably a good thing you've never had to understand that inner turmoil within yourself. And people aren't necessarily looking for you to understand them. They're just looking for you to accept that they're just different from you, and that's okay.
It just comes back to respect ultimately.
Yeah, and listening to your story and all of your hardships within the community you're living. I'm a very black and white person, and I'm like, why is it so hard for other people to just go, oh, that's not my life, so why does it affect me? Why can't I treat people equally?
Yes, and it seems to be really hard for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'll say to people, just try relating human to human.
Yeah.
How I live my life doesn't affect you in any way. And I'll say to people, I do actually support people who aren't in the LGBT community, you know. And funnily enough, I can provide the same standard of counselling as I do to my queer clients.
Well, that's it. We all bleed the same color. Our skeletons, if you take
Because I'm
away...
the same person.
Yeah. Our skeletons, if you take away skin color and you take away cultural and you take away religious beliefs, we all look the same without all of the skin. And when it comes down to that, I have a really hard time understanding
why people don't understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trust me, I knew what you were about to say.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we have to be okay with, or not be okay with, but we sit here and accept all these homophobic comments and all these things that we get like lashed with on a day-to-day basis. And me as a person, I can sit there and go, okay, well, that's your view. I feel sorry for you that you're missing out on having amazing friends and amazing community around you.
Yeah.
But that's your life and that's it.
Yeah.
I don't understand why when people have so much hatred for something they don't understand, they can't just do the same thing and say, oh, well, that's your life and you can live it and I will stay over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people are afraid of difference. People see it as a threat. And as you were saying, it's, you know, it's almost like people think it's catching, which is why I'll joke with my clients that I haven't converted anyone yet to my knowledge.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be like, funnily enough, that's not what's in my brain when I'm providing counselling.
It's not on your resume either.
No. You know, sometimes when you challenge people with that and you'll say, do you really think that's how it works? That's not quite how it works.
Yeah.
I don't have to convert people who are already queer.
Yeah, well, that's it.
Exactly.
That's it. If someone came to see you and then decided they were trans or non-binary, I'm pretty sure that was already within them and you just helped them
bring it to
find
the forefront.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Another part of your email, so you have so many stories, which is
so many
amazing.
Interesting. But also we're really sorry that you happen to have gone through all
obviously.
of these things.
Thank you.
I want to really talk about, you said that you've experienced exorcism.
I know, not many people say that, do they?
No, not at all.
Yeah. So kind of my anorexia journey got really bad, like I said, when I had a heart attack.
Yeah.
So that was 2003. And I also refer it to the time when my brain broke. So I also had a massive mental breakdown. So I was put into the psychiatric ward at the Royal Brisbane.
Yeah.
I was in there for about 2 months, and I was on nasal gastric feed, which is a tube that goes into your stomach to refeed you,
Yeah.
because I wasn't allowed to move, because otherwise I'd die.
Yeah, wow.
Like I said, I lost my brain in there. When they basically fatten you up, they don't give you any therapy. They fatten me up, they diagnosed me, didn't give me any medication, and shut me out. So, funnily enough, when I came out, I had a massive relapse. So, with that relapse, my ex husband and I trying to look for some form of rehab I could go to. Now, this is, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, there weren't public eating disorders clinics. So we found a private rehab,
Yeah.
and it was run by the Pentecostal church.
Yeah.
Now, when it was a rehab where it was a safe house, so basically it was for any female who was in danger or not well or addictions, etc. People didn't know where you were. You got psychiatric sessions every day. You didn't have any visitors, though. No visitors allowed, no access to the outside world, no news, no social media, nothing. And you could see the theory of that,
Yeah.
which was to give you the space. And I needed that space and quiet. I really needed that. And they helped me prepare my brain.
Yeah.
However, at the same time, I became indoctrinated. So part of the deal was, okay, the only thing they said was you go to church on a Sunday. That's the only religious part. And I hadn't been to church for decades, didn't believe in God at all.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't really want to do that. But okay, if that's what I have to do to stay here, I will. And so I did that. And naturally, of course, wasn't just that. It was Bible study every day. And it slowly progressed into brainwashing, really. So, yes, they saved my life. However, what happened is that during that time felt like it was an obligation that I needed to, be part of the church. Some of it I loved. I loved the community support. I loved the simplicity. I loved the sense of comfort I got from feeling that there was something bigger than me helping me recover,
Yeah.
and to a point. So what happened then is, because I wasn't recovering in the way they thought, I'm not really sure what that means. All of a sudden, in one service in front of the church, I was pulled out. And it was, okay, we're going to pray over you, which is part of the Pentecostal church, laying on the hands and praying over you to help you heal.
Yeah.
I didn't feel anything. And the next thing you knew, I had a group of pastors basically practicing an exorcism at the front of the church, praying over me in tongues, and then telling me that I had the root of the devil inside me, and they were pulling it out and they couldn't get it out. And that meant that, I was a sinner and I was doomed forever. And it was really confronting. I was pushed down to the floor by several of them. And the whole congregation was watching this. And because it didn't work, because they didn't get whatever they needed to get out of me. And, after that experience, I was treated extremely differently in the house. I was a sinner, but I didn't know why I was a sinner. I'm pretty sure that somehow they got wind of, because I was in a heterosexual marriage back then, even though my husband knew about my past. I don't know if they got wind of, me being queer when I have no idea, but it happened again. So naturally after that, I felt I was treated as if I was disgusting, but I had nowhere else to go. So we were still paying for me to stay there, because it takes a long time to recover from an eating disorder. And then all of a sudden in another service, it happened again. But this time it was like the head pastor. So it was the head pastor and the other pastors at the front of the church trying to get this root of, the devil out of me, and really making a display for the congregation. And again, it wouldn't come out. And that's when I was told that, I was doomed forever. The devil resided within me. And by that time, I was quite indoctrinated. So by that time, being told that you have the devil in you and you will be forever a sinner, and that you're not welcome in the church. And it was a really big deal. And for someone, basically felt they'd broken their brain, who had been healing, but then get told that you're beyond repair. And that's when I left. So I left and came out naturally, quite a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was alive,
Yeah.
but the faith I'd had been ruined. So the God I thought I had apparently then decided that I was the devil. And, and I thought, okay, so I've got the devil within me. What, because I'm queer? Is that what this is about? And I don't understand. And so, yeah, it came out a really big mess.
Yeah. I'm so sorry that you went through that.
It's really hard when, you obviously had a mental breakdown and you needed so much support, and this place was supporting you, only to essentially take all of your progress away and put you back to square one.
Yeah, and I really didn't realize when I was being interviewed recently on another podcast, because of course I like talking and I like trying to help other people. And this one is particularly about religious trauma. And the interviewer who's had religious trauma said to me, so it was a cult then. And it was like this moment where I went, what? And she said, so let me reflect that back to you. You had no access to the outside world. You had to behave in a certain way. You had Bible study every day. You went to church like all weekend. And then you get exercised. And then you get like chucked out. That's a cult.
Yeah, that's really sad.
I'm not saying I don't blame the Pentecostal church. This was a particular
Group of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And so looking back on that now, how have you been able to heal to get to a good place where you are now?
Of course, this is going to sound scripted. Therapy
Yeah.
from a therapist. So that's been well over a decade. So I've had therapy most of my life off and on, because I've also got a lot of addictions, a lot of trauma, suicide, self-harm, everything in my past. But this time I was like, right, I'm going to therapy regularly, like every week I'm going to therapy because I'm a mess. And it was also at that time when my ex-husband said, I can't do this anymore. We got to break up. I can't live this, which is fair enough. I put him through so much. So when we broke up, it was just me, and the only person who can repair my life is me. Shit. So that's when I started going to therapy regularly, and it took well over a decade for my anorexia and bulimia to go into remission, and to kind of repair everything else. So that's what's helped.
Yeah, can I just say, it's just so admirable that you were able to see that you weren't coping and that you were able to seek help from a therapist, because not many people do that.
Yeah, there's so many negative connotations around therapy because I think none of us want to believe there's something wrong or that we are having hard times. We don't want to be, associated with, I need help from an external source and I can't cope on my own. But I have this joke with a friend that it's like therapy is like putting your car in for a service. Literally. It's like we all need a tune up, even if it's just to look within ourselves over like a period of time. And I think that's a very positive thing.
It is.
Yes, I agree. Of course, now I'm a therapist, I agree.
Yeah.
But I agree back then too, because I knew I'd broken my brain back then. I was like, okay, I am a mess. Right. So the options are therapy or I kill myself. Those were the two options. And I'd already attempted suicide twice. And I was like, well, that didn't work very well. So I guess I'm going to have to try therapy. And I knew I was really tired. I was tired of my eating disorders. Like they'd been most of my life. I was like, if I can't beat them this time, that's it. I'm done. So it was really that important, that final.
I do not really believe in God, but I'm a very big spiritual person. And I believe that those suicide attempts for you didn't work for a reason, because now you're here helping other people. Yeah. Which leads me into my next question. Did you always want to be a therapist, or did you find yourself doing that because you had gone through so much hardship within yourself and then now you do have that opportunity to help other people?
Sort of, in a way. So when I was growing up, my parents became physically disabled when I was mid-teens. So I became like an unofficial carer for them. So I grew up knowing what it's like to care for people. My dad was also a paranoid schizophrenic alcoholic, and my mum had postnatal depression, and my nan had bipolar. So I grew up around mental health disorders and a lot of addiction. So I grew up around that. I grew up as a kid looking at people going, not quite sure. I remember looking at my dad throwing things around, which he often did, not at people, he just threw things. I'm thinking, I don't really know what's going on there. I wonder what's going on. So I spent a lot of time as a kid to understand people's brains around me
Yeah.
with my chronic pain. So I had a day shooting across my face and down my neck. So
Yeah.
I had 6 major surgeries which failed. During the first or second recovery period, and my therapist, who I just mentioned to you, my psychologist, who knows me very well, I remember he said to me one day, I really think that this is what you need to be doing. And now that you're not working, you're going to be bored. And I remember saying, no, I'm having my head cut open a few times. I'm going to be recovering. He said, you'll be bored. I went, no, I won't. I'll be resting. And he said, I still think that you could do this. And I said, why would I want to do this? And he said, because you can. I went, I don't believe you. And he said, we're going to keep going until you run out of excuses. I was like, oh, okay. So we kept going for a while. And in the end, he said, okay, so you're going to give it a go? And I went, okay. And my wife picked me up from the appointment and I got in the car and I said, so anyway, it looks like I'm going to be trained to be a therapist. And she went, oh, good. You think so too? And she went, yes, because my wife's autistic and has ADHD. And we went through that diagnostic process when we met. She's like, yeah, because you understand people. I'm like, right, everybody's been aware of this and not me. So it was during my head surgery recovery, laughing, I am, as I'm realizing it sounds quite silly, that I started studying. And it was right. And I was like, oh, he's right. My therapist is right. And also, yes, a major driver for me was, okay, therapy is the only thing that saved my life. And I'm not saying that I saves everybody's lives, but also, like we've talked on, today, a lot of my experiences people don't talk about. They're not quite as raw as me. And I'm very much an open book with my clients. So, I love helping them. Most of my clients have extensive trauma. I'm quite hard to be shocked. So I love the fact that I can have that space where they can say all that and I don't lose my shit and go, right, okay, let's help you through that. So I love my job. I really do. And I've set up my clinic to cater for my head pain. So yeah, it's the reason I go through my days. And I love it. And I possibly should have done it decades earlier, but then I wouldn't have the experience.
That's it. And there's so much merit to having experience, like you just said, where, not a lot of your past shocks your clients because they've gone through extensive trauma. Well, it's kind of goes hand in hand, right? So you can help them with extensive trauma because of the experience that you've gone through, no matter how negative it was for you in those times. You can really use that as a catalyst to help because you know the depths of depression and the depths of despair and the things that you've really had to do feeling isolated in a community. And, you can bring all of those things to the forefront and really help people that really may feel like no one in this world can understand them.
Yeah, and that's in particular, I see that a lot now in the trans community. So, in the trans community, my clients can talk to me and go, so I've just had like gender realignment surgery and my genitals aren't working properly and I'm not quite sure what to do with them. And I'm like, okay, cool, I can help you with that. So, they can be that raw with me, or they can go, I've just had my T-shot and my libido's gone through the roof and I'm not coping. I'm like, it's fine, let's talk. So, I know a lot about hormones and transition and gender. And, I didn't talk to my own therapist about gender for the same reason. I was like, he's not going to understand. I'm only going to talk to a queer therapist about it. We're very particular because it's extremely exposing and you really need to have someone who reflects back to you. I see you for exactly who you tell me you are.
Yeah.
That's it. And because we're not going to get the help we need if we can't be open and raw with the person that's there to help us.
Yeah.
Wow. There's so much. Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Tasha.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Is there anything that you would like to touch on before we end the call?
I think it's a typical therapy thing to say. So now I'm in my role. Very much, there is always someone who can help you. There's so many of us out here, whether it's a counselor or a psychologist or a social worker or a life coach or a mindset coach. I know it's hard to find someone to connect with, but even when you look at the multiple hotlines, and I know it's hard to reach out for help. I was really good at not doing it for a long time. But we often think we're not going to find someone, and there are people. And you might think my story is going to be too shocking for someone. No, not always. Most of the
No.
time, no.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. And just
Thank you.
quickly, that's okay. And just quickly taking it back to what you said, you know, you're not saying that you helped save anyone, but in us doing this podcast and speaking to you, you never know who you're going to help, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
Yeah.
And also, you guys, we're going to put all of Tasha's info in the show notes so you guys can reach out to her.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for also supporting our podcast and wanting to jump on and tell your story to us today. It's been an amazing time talking to you.
Thank you very much.
No worries. And we'll keep in contact, and we hope that if there's anything community-based or anything that we can support you with, you can reach out to us.
That's great. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tasha.
Okay.
We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
That was so cool.
That was absolutely amazing.
That was amazing. I feel like so many people listening to this episode are going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone.
Yes, and that is what we've always said from day one, and I think we've said it nearly every episode, the importance of not feeling like you're the only person on this earth struggling, and the fact that you can find other people or hear someone else's story and go, oh my God, it's not just me.
Yeah, exactly. So like I said before, guys, we're going to make sure with Tasha's approval and consent, of course, to put her links in the show notes as well as any other helplines.
We really hope that you got a lot out of this episode with Tasha today. And, you know, if any of you have stories that you want to tell, please reach out. We really do want to use this podcast as a platform for everyone to be able to share their experiences and enlighten other people and embrace other people.
That's true. And until next time.
Yeah, stay gay, motherfuckers.
I'm talking about, you're talking about, we're talking about just gay stuff.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Just Gay Stuff. Make sure to follow us at Just Gay Stuff Podcast on all your socials and write to us with your stories at justgaystuffpodcast@gmail.com.